Again, here we are just further down the line in the neck department where the plastic edge binding is being applied or glued to the edge of the fretboard. We use an injection molded part that we have manufactured to our spec in Nashville, and it's glued on with super glue. Again, tedious handwork, but part of the overall excellence of the guitar. To ensure that it's correct and that it seats properly, each one is hand inspected repeatedly before the set material, which welds it to the wood basically. This now will be cut down to the appropriate height of the fretboard top and bottom, and the frets will be inserted one at a time. Here we are in the fretting department where each fret is pressed in by hand. Frets are pre-cut on almost all guitars nowadays. Come to us at the right offset so they'll clear the binding. Or in the case of the traditional Gibson, where the plastic nub is left over the edge of the fret, we use a coil of fret wire. We cut each one to length, trim the board, and then apply the plastic binding. This operation requires probably the steadiest hand to ensure accuracy overall. It looks pretty simple when you watch a guy press them in, but next to the top, this is probably the most important part of a guitar to make it play. The top's got to produce the sound. This is how you get the sound out of it, is by an accurately fretted fretboard. The operators that do this have been trained in the entire department and can work on any phase of neck building, but naturally gravitate the best operators to the best positions. Each one could cover if someone was out, but we rely on the consistency of handwork. Since the neck tapers from narrow to wide, it takes a different amount of pressure to insert the fret at the first fret than it does at the 20th fret. And so we rely on the rhythm of the operator to do the job accurately every time. Here we are at neck assembly, where the fretboard is going to be glued to the actual neck. We watch the neck and the fretboard be made. Like everything else in our factory, we try to incorporate accuracy in assembly. You'll see these two holes, they correspond to a pair of pins that are located in the fretboard. That was done in the second operation. The center line and the accuracy of the contour was assured. Again, we're using fireman's hose because now we have a completely contoured shape that any application of a clamp other than something that might fill in contour to it would damage the finished product. We've carved that neck within a few thousandths of its finished profile based on a historic or a modern concept shape. After the neck is glued together and allowed to cure, it moves over to the sanding bench. And I hope you can see how accurate the assembly of this guitar and the manufacturing of the parts are. There is no room for error. There might be 10 thousandths worth of wood to remove on the very edge of this guitar neck. And all the profiles are correct. As we saw, the peg head is cut to its final dimension, requires very little sanding, if any. All we want to do is take any light machine marks out, and in this case we're sanding to the final dimension before it's actually glued to the guitar body. One of the things that we use here is direct lighting so that we're casting a shadow. That way, when the operator's using a sander, he can control the contour and make sure there's no dips or gouges in it. They would show up as a black shadow or a lump in the finish. In the neckline, we have this tool that was bequeathed to us by Orville Gibson himself, I'm sure. This tool's old enough that it probably was run with something other than electricity in its earliest phase. Actually, this is probably from right around the war period, maybe a little bit earlier, Second World War. And this is one of the two tools that we have remaining from the Kalamazoo Guitar Factory. This is where we put the dovetail on the guitar neck. There's a pattern here of a dovetail in steel, and we run a stylus around that, and it transfers in a pantograph cut to the neck that's positioned below. The neck's angle is ensured by attaching it to a plate, lifted out at the optimum degree to meet our body, which we call 3 degrees, and in reality is a 27934, something like that. But we call it 3 degrees. This is kind of cool because it's a piece of history that we get to continue with. Much of everything else in the factory we've fabricated ourselves. This operation could actually be done on the Fadal with the appropriate tooling, but it's nice that we have a piece of history that we can continue to use. We're here at rib bend. This is where the guitar's form is actually shaped. We use a piece of wood that's been soaked in water for a short period of time to aid in transferring the heat of the press into the ligum of the wood. What we're trying to achieve is the softening of the actual fiber of the wood so that on the outside of a curve it stretches, but it allows to compress on the inside of a curve. This press that we're using is one that actually was used in Kalamazoo back as early as dreadnoughts were built. We got this from Nashville when we first opened up the factory. This and the Dovetailer are the only traditional old factory tools that we have. After this press is closed, a given period of time goes by, and then saws automatically are started and the ribs are cut to length. Once they're cut to length, blocks are glued into them, and then they move forward in the building process.